Thank you. You're so good to me, Jimmy, except when we play Words with Friends. So last night I realized at dinner that John Briffa is going to be following me, and that made me really insecure because he's British and I'm an American and I pronounce my R's. So I was trying to figure out how I could possibly one-up him, and so I was going to just scrap this whole presentation and do an interpretive, statistical dance, but when I dance, it looks like I have epilepsy, so I decided since I'm not on a ketogenic diet, you guys might get confused and send me to the cruise hospital. So I'm sticking with my presentation, and to compete with the Brit, I'm just going to let you know it was my birthday 4 days ago. And it was not, thank you! And as far as I know, it was not John's birthday 4 days ago. So just keep that in mind when you're listening to him talk. All right, now we can get started. How many people have read this book, The China Study? Who could read it? How many people have attempted to read it? Hands up. Okay. How many people have not read it, but you've looked online for reasons that it's wrong because you don't want it to be true? Okay, well, there we go. So that's probably how maybe you found my blog, or there's some other critiques out there that are wonderful, by Chris Masterjohn and Anthony Colpo. And has anyone here just never actually even heard of this book before, and this is kind of new to you? Couple people. So obviously you do not have any vegan friends on Facebook. Otherwise you would know by now that this book is the bane of your existence. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. The China Study, it was written by T. Colin Campbell, who's the professor emeritus at Cornell University. And this is not just any professor emeritus off the street. He is very credentialed. He has over 300 scientific publications, and he has worked for 40 years as a researcher. So he holds a lot of weight in the scientific community just because of all of his experience. And the book itself is 417 pages, and for some reason a lot of people think the book is actually peer-reviewed, but it's not. It's published by Ben Bella Books, which puts out other titles like The Psychology of the Simpsons and You're Not Supposed to Talk About Fight Club, and a lot of pop culture stuff. So it's kind of interesting that his book got lumped in with this particular publisher. And the book, it's named after the China Study, which I'll talk about in a minute, but this particular book was called The Grand Prix of Epidemiology by the New York Times, and if you read that the first time like me and you're like, what's the Grand Prix? That sounds painful. That actually means it's the grand prize. It's a word in French, and it just means it's like this really amazing thing that we should all be in awe of. And while I was actually doing research for this, I came across an interesting summary of the China Study where someone said the book is more talked about than actually read, which I thought was so true because even people who use this thing to prove their point often haven't even read the book itself. So let's move on. This is some of what the China Study tells us is true. First thing, which I think will probably not jive with a lot of people in this crowd, is that animal protein promotes cancer growth like a carcinogen. And in fact, yeah, that's unfortunate if it would be true. And we're going to talk about that, why it's not true. But Campbell himself has actually said that certain proteins like casein in milk should actually be qualified and classified as carcinogens. So it's a little extreme, but a lot of people have read this book and come away completely believing it's true. The book also blames animal products in any form, doesn't matter if it's grass-fed, free-range, whatever. All of it, no matter what, is going to contribute to chronic disease. Things like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, you name it, animal products are the cause. So you can kind of see by now why vegans really like this book and why you guys probably don't. And Campbell also strongly opposes low-carb diets, and he has a lot of reasons for that. And for anyone who's ever been on Amazon.com and you know how they have reviews that you post and then you can comment on the reviews, if you go to any of the Atkins books, you will find a review from Campbell that has like 400 comments after it, which he's participating in, arguing with people, which is, if you ever want to just kill a day or 4 or a week, you can go online and you can watch this, and it's almost like a sitcom in some sense. So I don't know how he has time to do that, but it seems like one of his hobbies, so if, all right. And so I mentioned this earlier, it's named after the China study, which is a 20-year epidemiological project that Campbell was the director of. So that's where the title of the book comes from, even though the entire book itself is not only about the China study. So what is the China study? And I have to say that as an English major, writing study just killed me. It's like Rio Grande River, but this is how I'm distinguishing the China study from the actual study itself, the book versus the study. So it's also called the China Cornell Oxford Project, and it's an observational study of 65 rural counties in China with 1,000 people in each county that they observed and took data from. And then they compiled and averaged all the values for each county so that we ended up with 65 data points. So it's actually, even though it's a huge study, we actually don't have that many data points for it, which is not a great thing in terms of statistical analysis, but it is what we have to work for, and it's actually a very well done study in most respects. And so the mortality data for this study was taken from the 1970s, and the rest was from the early 1980s. And as I mentioned, this is an epidemiological study. Is it all right? We all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And does anyone know what epidemiology is? Have some idea? A couple people? Yeah. So the technical breakdown of it is the study of things that can never, ever prove cause and effect. If you look it up in the dictionary, it should say this, but it usually doesn't. That's a shame because this is kind of the truth. But if we actually break down the word, it's epi, which means upon or on. Like, does anyone remember being in 3rd grade and someone said, "Oh, your epidermis is showing," and you were like mortified because you had no idea what that was? Remember that? Epi is like on you, your skin is on you. And then dem is people. So epidemiology is the study of what is upon the people. It's the study of disease in populations. But epidemiology is observational, which means we don't actually manipulate variables to see what is causing what. We just take a bunch of data and we see, okay, this is happening, they're kind of happening at the same time. We don't really know why, but there you have it. So the unfortunate part of this type of field of study is that it catches fire in the media. Whenever we have an epidemiological study come out that shows, meat is causing cancer in people, or that it's associated with cancer or something, everyone assumes correlation equals causation, which is just not true. The things that we see in epidemiology can never prove cause and effect. So we know right away that the China study itself cannot prove cause and effect. So what? Right away? Oh my goodness, right after I told you I was an English major too. Okay, well, let's just pretend that was a pun, okay? Anyway, so just ignore that word. And since this isn't a controlled study, great. Since this isn't a controlled experiment, there's nothing in the China study that is actually proving anything. So just keep that in mind as we're talking today.